Some people don't want attention because they're confident. They want attention because without it, they feel invisible. And invisibility can feel emotionally painful. Most people misunderstand attention seekers. They immediately assume, this person is narcissistic. They're dramatic. They just want validation. And sometimes that's true. But psychology is rarely that simple, because attention-seeking behavior often starts much deeper than ego. Sometimes it starts with emotional neglect, loneliness, insecurity, rejection, or growing up in environments where attention was the only way to feel valued. That's why some people don't just enjoy attention, they emotionally depend on it. And over time, that dependence slowly changes how they behave, think, and even see themselves. Human beings naturally want recognition. We want to feel seen, important, acknowledged. That's completely normal. But for some people, attention becomes more than enjoyment. It becomes emotional proof that they matter. And this usually happens when self-worth is weak internally. If someone cannot emotionally validate themselves, they start relying on external reactions instead. Likes, replies, compliments, views, attention. These things become emotional reassurance, and the brain slowly learns something dangerous. When people notice me, I feel valuable. That's where the cycle begins. Before social media, attention was temporary, now it's measurable. Followers, views, likes, comments. People can literally measure how noticed they are. And psychologically, this changes behavior dramatically. Because the brain treats validation like a reward. Every notification creates a small dopamine response, which means attention becomes chemically reinforcing. This is why some people constantly check notifications, post repeatedly, overshare emotionally, or become anxious when engagement drops. It's not always vanity. Sometimes the brain becomes addicted to feeling acknowledged, and eventually silence starts feeling personal. No notifications. The brain interprets it emotionally. No one cares. No one notices me. I'm losing value. That's why some people panic when attention disappears, because emotionally, attention became tied to identity. Some people constantly reveal personal information online, trauma, relationships, private emotions. And from the outside, it can look attention-seeking. But psychologically, oversharing is often emotional hunger. Some people never felt emotionally understood in real life. So when people online react emotionally, they finally feel heard. And that feeling becomes comforting, especially for emotionally lonely people. The internet becomes emotional replacement, not connection, replacement. That's why some people tell strangers things they would never tell family, because strangers sometimes validate emotions faster. Confident people enjoy attention. Insecure people depend on it. That's the difference. Someone with stable self-worth doesn't collapse emotionally when ignored. But someone with deep insecurity often feels emotionally threatened by invisibility. That's why some people constantly perform, trying to look perfect, funny, interesting, attractive, different, because they fear being emotionally forgettable. And underneath that behavior, there's often fear. Fear of irrelevance, fear of abandonment, fear of not being enough. Attention becomes temporary emotional relief, but only temporary, because external validation fades quickly, and when it fades, the insecurity returns again, which creates another cycle of seeking attention. Not all attention-seeking is intentional. Some people genuinely believe, this is just my personality. But behavior patterns reveal deeper motivation. For example, constantly interrupting conversations, making everything about themselves, creating drama repeatedly, posting indirectly for reactions, always needing reassurance. These behaviors often come from emotional dependency on recognition, not always narcissism, sometimes emotional immaturity, sometimes insecurity, sometimes loneliness, and sometimes years of feeling emotionally unseen. One of the darkest psychological facts is this: for emotionally starved people, negative attention can still feel rewarding, because being hated can feel emotionally safer than being ignored. This explains why some people create conflict intentionally, why some provoke others online. Silence feels invisible, conflict feels noticed. And psychologically, being noticed often feels emotionally stronger than peace, even if the attention is negative. That's why some people repeatedly create chaos. Not because they enjoy pain, because chaos guarantees emotional reaction. The more someone depends on attention, the less stable their identity becomes, because now their self-worth depends on external reaction, which means mood changes constantly. Good reactions, confidence rises; less attention, self-worth crashes. And eventually, the person stops asking, "Who am I really?" and starts asking, "How do I keep people interested?" That's psychologically dangerous, because now identity becomes performance, and performance is exhausting. Wanting attention is human. Everyone enjoys feeling appreciated. The problem starts when attention becomes emotional survival. Healthy people enjoy validation. Unhealthy dependency needs validation constantly. That's the difference. One is emotional enjoyment, the other is emotional reliance. And emotionally relying on strangers for self-worth is extremely unstable. Most people think the solution is, just stop caring what people think. But psychology doesn't work that simply. The real solution is building internal validation, learning how to feel valuable without constant external reassurance. That means creating identity outside of attention, building real confidence slowly, spending time away from constant validation loops, and most importantly, learning that silence does not reduce your value, because a person's worth does not disappear when attention disappears. Attention-seeking behavior is often misunderstood. Sometimes it's ego, sometimes narcissism, but many times it's emotional emptiness trying to feel visible. And once you understand that, you stop seeing attention seekers as annoying and start seeing the psychology underneath the behavior. Because behind many loud personalities is someone deeply afraid of being emotionally unseen. Subscribe to TheMindWiz to understand your mind.